Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I never thought much about working nights at a hotel. If anything, I kinda liked it. I wasn't much of a morning person anyway, and the idea of clocking in at 10 at night and finishing up at 6 in the morning sounded like a schedule made for me. The place wasn't some big city tower or anything fancy, just a small, independent hotel off the interstate in a quiet town in Ohio. We had 3 floors, about 40 rooms total, and on weeknights, maybe a dozen of them would actually be occupied. The job was simple: sit at the desk, answer the phones, check in any late guests, and keep an eye on things. Most nights it was so quiet, I'd end up reading, messing with the computer, or watching YouTube videos on my phone. The hotel lobby was tiny, front desk facing the entrance, a couple of couches and chairs with a TV on the wall, vending machines humming in the corner. Behind me was a small office with a glass window that looked out into the lobby. If I wanted, I could sit in there with the door cracked and still keep an eye on everything. When I first got the job, my sister teased me saying, "Man, that's how all horror movies start. Night clerk at some lonely hotel off the highway." "You better watch your back," I laughed it off. Truth be told, it felt safe enough. The front doors locked automatically after midnight. Guests had to buzz to get in, and all I had to do was press a button to unlock it. There were cameras on every floor, in the stairwells, outside in the parking lot, and of course in the lobby. I never thought much would happen, until one night proved me dead wrong. It was late October, about a year ago now. I'd been at the job for maybe 6 months. By then I knew the routine like the back of my hand. Around 11 p.m., I was sitting behind the desk, flipping through the day's check-in logs when the buzzer went off at the front doors. I glanced up and saw a man standing outside under the porch light. Mid-40s maybe, tall, a little on the skinny side but not scrawny. Jeans, dark jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low. He had a backpack slung over one shoulder. I pressed the buzzer and let him in. He stepped through the doors and walked up to the desk. "Evenin'," he said in this low, flat voice. "Good evening," I replied, putting on my best front desk smile. "Looking for a room tonight?" "Yeah, just one night." I gave him the rate, and he nodded. He slid a credit card across the counter. I swiped it, heard the beep, and the screen flashed approved. I handed him a key card for room 205. "Here you go, second floor. Elevator's right over there." He didn't say thanks. He just stared at me for a few seconds, longer than normal, like he was sizing me up. His expression was blank. No smile, no frown. Just empty. Then he picked up his card, turned, and walked off toward the elevator. I shook it off. Some people were just weird. And working in a hotel, you learn not to take it personally. An hour later, I looked up from my phone and almost jumped out of my chair. The man was back. He didn't come to the desk this time. He just walked right past me and sat down on one of the couches in the lounge area. The TV wasn't on, but he sat down like he was about to watch it anyway. At first, I didn't think too much about it. Some guests came down late at night if they couldn't sleep. Maybe they wanted a snack or just didn't want to be stuck in their rooms. But after 20 minutes, he was still there. Not on his phone, not reading, not dozing off, just sitting, staring straight at the blank TV screen. Something about it made me uneasy. I tried to ignore it, but every time I glanced up, he was still in the exact same position, like a mannequin planted on the couch. I finally got up to grab a bottle of water from the vending machine. As I walked across the lobby, I could feel his eyes follow me the entire way. I didn't look at him directly, but I knew he was watching. When I sat back down at the desk, my stomach had this heavy, nervous feeling. Around 1 in the morning, I pulled up the reservation system on the computer just to keep busy. That's when I noticed something that made my chest tighten. Room 205, the one I gave him, was listed as vacant. I frowned and double-checked. Maybe I entered something wrong. But when I looked at the check-in logs, there was nothing. No name, no charge, nothing. I switched over to the payment screen, And sure enough, there was no transaction for the credit card. My first thought was, no way. I know I swiped that card. I heard the beep. I printed the damn keycard. But the system showed nothing. It was like he never checked in at all. I picked up the phone and dialed room 205. It rang and rang, but no one answered. Then I checked the keycard entry log, the system that shows when a guest room door has been opened. It showed 0 activity for 205 that night. That's when it hit me. He never went to the room. I slowly turned my head toward the lounge. There he was, still sitting on the couch, still staring at the dark TV. My throat went dry. I debated calling my manager, but part of me didn't want to sound paranoid. Maybe the system glitched. Maybe the transaction didn't go through, but he really did check in. I sat there another 15 minutes just watching him from behind the desk. Finally, I walked over, trying to sound casual. "Everything all right, sir?" He slowly turned his head toward me. His eyes looked almost glassy. "Can't sleep," he said simply. Then he turned back to the TV. "Okay, well, let me know if you need anything." I forced a smile and went back to the desk, but my hands were shaking. At 2 a.m., I looked up and he was gone. My stomach dropped. I scanned the lobby, but he wasn't on the couch anymore. Then I spotted him, standing at the far end of the hallway near the bathrooms, half hidden in the shadows. He just stood there, perfectly still. I kept glancing at him, pretending to be busy on the computer. After a few minutes, he slowly turned and walked back to the lounge, sat down again, and resumed staring at the blank TV. That was the moment I called my manager. She sounded half asleep and told me, "If he does anything threatening, call the cops. Just keep an eye on him. Just keep an eye on him." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one alone at 2 a.m. with a stranger wandering the halls. I pulled up the security cameras after that. On the first-floor hallway cam, I watched him walk all the way down the hall, stop at the end, and just stand there for several minutes before walking back. Later, he went into the stairwell and stayed in there for 10 minutes. Every time I looked up from the monitor, he was somewhere different, near the vending machines, by the elevator. Once he was standing near the corner of the lobby, where the light didn't fully reach, just staring in my direction. By 3:30, my nerves were shot. I called the non-emergency police line and explained that I had a man in the hotel who didn't seem to be a guest. They said they'd send someone to check it out. While I was waiting, I noticed him move again, this time closer. He was standing about 15 feet away from the desk, just staring at me. Not blinking much, not speaking, just watching. I pretended to type something, but my heart was pounding so hard I thought he could probably hear it. At 3:50, the buzzer went off. My stomach leapt. Finally, the cops. But it wasn't. It was just another guest coming back late. I let him in quickly. The man turned his head and watched the guest walk across the lobby. His eyes followed him the whole way, like he was studying him. That scared me worse than anything else so far. A few minutes later, I checked the cameras and nearly dropped the mouse. The man was on the first floor again, standing outside a guest room door. Just standing there. That was it. I called 911. I told them there was a man inside the hotel, not a guest, and he was standing outside people's rooms. They said officers were on the way. I kept my eyes glued to the camera feed, barely breathing. He stood at the guest's door for a few minutes, then slowly walked back to the lobby. This time he came straight to the desk. He leaned over the counter, his face inches from mine. "Got any food?" he asked in this low, almost growling voice. My throat was so dry I could barely speak. Vending machines. Right there." I pointed with a trembling hand. He gave me this tiny smile, then walked away. Finally, around 4:10, 2 officers showed up. I let them in and pointed him out immediately. He was back in the lounge, sitting on the couch like nothing happened. The cops walked over and talked to him for a few minutes. They asked for his ID. He handed it over. They asked him some questions I couldn't hear. Then they stood him up and escorted him out. One of the officers came back inside. "Yeah, he's not a guest," he told me. credit card he gave you was stolen. No bags, no reservation. Just hanging around. We're charging him with trespassing and the stolen card. When they left, I sat behind the desk, shaking so hard I could barely hold a pen. For the rest of my shift, every time I checked the cameras, I expected to see him again. What messed me up the most wasn't even that he wasn't a guest. It was knowing he'd been wandering around for hours, standing in hallways, hiding in corners, watching me, and standing outside guests' doors. I don't know what his plan was, but I know it wasn't good. That was the scariest night of my life. I never thought I'd still be working nights past my 20s, but here I am, 33 years old, still pulling the graveyard shift. I started at the shipping warehouse when I was 28. At first, I told myself it was temporary, a few months until I found something better. But then the paychecks kept coming, the rent kept getting paid, and suddenly 5 years had gone by. If you've ever worked nights, you know how it warps your whole life. Your friends stop calling because you're asleep when they're free. Family dinners, birthdays, even just grabbing a beer on a Saturday night. It all slips away because your body doesn't know which way is up anymore. My mom used to say, night jobs eat people alive. They turn you into a ghost. I used to laugh that off, but now when I catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m, pale skin under the buzzing fluorescent lights, I think maybe she wasn't wrong. The place itself isn't much to look at. Rows of conveyor belts running like veins across the floor, stacks of metal shelving that go up 20 feet, forklifts zipping past with their whining beeps. The smell never leaves either. That weird chemical plastic stench clings to your clothes no matter how many times you wash them. And the break room? Hell, the break room smells like burnt popcorn and old coffee, always. We've got vending machines that seem cursed. One eats your dollar, the other spits out expired chips. 5-star service. The crew's decent enough, though nobody's best friends. It's more like quiet camaraderie. There's Tommy, who never stops singing off-key R&B into his earbuds. Then there's Ray, who shows up late every damn night, half a Red Bull in his hand, looking like he rolled out of a moving car. Nobody understands how he's never been written up. People mostly keep to themselves unless it's to complain about overtime or the vending machine drama. I'd settled into a rhythm. Clock in at 10 p.m., clock out at 6 a.m., sometimes later if we're behind. Same routine for years. Then halfway through July, things changed. That's when he showed up. The first night I saw him, I knew he didn't belong. He was older than the rest of us, maybe mid to late 40s. Clean cut, pressed khakis, polished shoes. Nobody wears khakis to a warehouse. That's how you know somebody won't last. He didn't talk much that first night, just followed the supervisor around, nodding at everything like he was taking mental notes. The second night, same thing. Quiet, polite nods, shadowing whoever was closest. I figured he was a temp from one of those agencies' corporate uses when we're short-staffed. Happens all the time. They come in, work a week, maybe 2, then vanish. But by the third night, something felt off. I was in the break room pouring myself a cup of what we called coffee but really tasted like warm dishwater. He walked in and stood by the machine, staring at it like he was debating whether it was worth the risk. Then he looked at me. "You get off right at 6, he asked, "or do they ever keep you late?" The question caught me off guard. I figured maybe he was just trying to get a sense of how long these shifts really ran. "Depends," I said with a shrug. "Sometimes later if we're behind." He smiled. Not a big one, just enough to look polite. Just curious. I didn't think much of it at first. Not a weird question on its own. But later that night, I was restocking a shelf and he wandered by again. "You park in the front lot?" he asked. I had a mouthful of sandwich, but nodded anyway. "Yeah, easier to get out when shift ends." He looked thoughtful. "Smart. My car's in the back. Might move it tomorrow." The way he said it, it wasn't just small talk. It was like he was filing information away. From there, Things started to shift. Everywhere I went, he was there. If I switched aisles, 5 minutes later he'd stroll through. If I changed my break time, he'd somehow line his up too. Once, I went to the far side of the building for some quiet, and damn if he didn't show up leaning on the same stack of boxes, sipping a blue Gatorade, the same one I always bought. At first I brushed it off. Coincidence. But then one night, I realized we were eating the exact same thing. Microwave burrito, blue Gatorade, pack of crackers. Same as me. That's when I started feeling the crawl of unease. And then came the key card. I always clip it to my belt. Always. One night, halfway through shift, I reached down to swipe for my lunch break, and it was gone. Vanished. I retraced my steps for almost an hour, checked the floor, break room, bathrooms, nothing. It bothered me more than I wanted to admit. That card was practically glued to me. Later that night, around 3 a.m, I was zoning out in the break room. There's a big window that overlooks the front parking lot. Only real natural light comes through when the sun starts to rise. But under those harsh outdoor lamps, something snapped me awake. My car door. Wide open. I jumped up so fast I spilled my coffee, bolted outside, heart hammering. Nobody was around. My glove box was hanging open. I always keep it locked. Everything looked untouched, except one thing. The spare apartment key I keep hidden in the back corner. Gone. I went straight to security. We pulled the camera footage, but of course the lot cam is ancient, grainy, maybe 15 frames a second. All we could make out was a blurry figure leaning into my car, then walking away. Could have been anyone. Could have been him. The guard just shrugged. We'll log it. Keep an eye out. The next few nights, I parked under the one working floodlight on the far side of the lot. Didn't help. Every time I walked out, I felt it. That sharp, pricking sense that someone's eyes were on me. And then I noticed the car. White sedan. 4-door. Tinted windows. First night, parked across the street from my apartment. Second night, same spot. Third night, half a block closer. Fourth night, gone. Fifth night, back again. That same shift, I caught him standing by my station. I was scanning boxes, and he wasn't even pretending to work. Just standing there, arms crossed, watching me. I walked over, trying to play it cool. Hey, you been in the front lot lately? He tilted his head. Why? Because someone got into my car. He smiled, didn't blink. That's wild. People do anything these days. Then he walked off. That night I stepped outside for some air, lit a cigarette, leaned against the railing. I tried not to stare at the lot, but I caught movement. Someone was crouched by my car, not rifling through it, just squatting, like they were inspecting the wheel well. I dropped the cigarette and ran. By the time I got there, nothing. No car driving off, no footsteps, nobody. But lying next to my tire was my old key card. I didn't go back inside. I sat in my car with the doors locked until the sun came up. When I finally drove home, I kept checking the rearview mirror the whole way. At my apartment, I locked the door, shoved a chair under the knob, closed every curtain. Didn't sleep. Couldn't. At 6:45 a.m., the exact time I'd normally be getting home from work, I heard it. The soft metallic sound of my doorknob jiggling. I froze, barely breathed. After a few seconds, it stopped. I waited, counted to 60, then another 60, finally crept to the peephole. Nothing. But then I heard them. Slow, quiet footsteps, fading down the hall. I filed a police report the next morning. Told them everything. The temperature, the key, the break-in. They listened, polite but unconcerned. Took my statement. Said they'd investigate. That night, HR pulled me aside. The temp hadn't shown up. No call, no notice. They pulled his file. No badge ever issued. Time card handwritten. I called the agency, gave them his name. They told me they never sent anyone by that name to our site. It was like he never existed. I changed my locks, got a door camera, moved my spare key to a locked drawer in my bedroom. I don't keep anything in the glove box anymore. Some nights, walking to my car, I still feel it. That prickling at the back of my neck, that sense of eyes in the dark. I don't know what his intentions were, don't know why he chose me, but I keep my keys somewhere new now, somewhere no one can find them. I never thought I'd end up working nights again. After what happened at my last job, I swore I'd never put myself through another toxic workplace. My old editor had broken me down piece by piece, calling my work cliched garbage, even when I knew it was solid. He once made me redo a 700-shot portfolio in a single weekend, only to publish the very shots he called trash. That was the kind of place I left behind. But bills don't care about principles. Rent, groceries, my car note, they all piled up. And so when I got the offer from Harbor Light magazine, I couldn't say no. The company specialized in lifestyle features, celebrity coverage, and special events. Photography was their bread and butter, and apparently they'd been eyeing me for years. On my first day, walking into their office felt different. The walls were painted a soft blush pink, not the sterile white of most corporate spaces. The lighting was warm instead of harsh fluorescent. It gave the whole floor a strangely calming vibe, almost like walking into a cafe instead of a newsroom. I was led to a private office tucked into a quiet corner, my own office. In 6 years of grinding, I'd never had one. I stood there for a moment with my hand on the doorknob, smiling at the absurdity of it. "Hey, new guy," someone called from the open office floor. I turned. A woman with a messy bun and a yellow cardigan waved at me from her desk. "Welcome to the madhouse," she said with a grin. I chuckled. "Thanks." "Name's Nolan Sam," she said. "Photo desk's lucky to have you." I nodded, then slipped into my office. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, I exhaled. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd landed somewhere good. I set up my laptop and pulled up some of my old work. Weddings, gala dinners, charity events, shots of a bride's smile, a CEO cutting a ribbon, kids with ice cream dripping down their wrists. My last boss called it boring stock. Finesse magazine called it iconic. There was a knock at my door. "Come in," I said. The man who walked in carried himself with quiet authority. Late 40s, maybe 50, with a trim beard flecked with gray and a crisp navy suit. "Nolan?" he asked. "Yes, sir." I stood. He extended his hand. "I'm Mr. Grant, Editor-in-Chief. Welcome aboard." I shook his hand. "Thank you, sir. I'm excited to be here." He gestured to the chair opposite mine and sat down. "I'll get straight to it. You've got a good eye. Subtle, but sharp. You blend into a crowd. That's rare in photography. Most people want to be seen. You disappear until the moment matters." I wasn't sure how to respond, so I just said, "I try my best." Grant leaned forward slightly. "There's a job I want you to handle. Something delicate. You'll hear whispers about it from no one but me. This is between us," I frowned. "On my first day?" He smiled faintly. "I don't waste time." He didn't give details, just said it was high priority and confidential. He wanted to be sure I could handle it. That night, lying in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about it. A secret assignment on day one? Something only he and I would know about? My gut twisted between excitement and unease. The next day, Grant showed up at my office again. He asked for my photos from the events I'd covered that day, nodded in approval, then closed the door. "This is what I need from you," he said, lowering his voice. "There's a group of people in this city who think they own it. And truth be told, they almost do. Politicians, business owners, surgeons, real estate barons, you name it. They gather every Friday night just after midnight, always at the same abandoned bungalow on East Harbor Street." He paused, watching my face. I said nothing, just listened. I used to run a crime magazine, he continued. We dug into corruption, trafficking, underground deals. But every time we got close, the stories vanished. Funding pulled, offices raided, advertisers disappeared overnight. And who do you think was behind that? The same group, I guessed. He nodded. I need evidence. Photos, faces, proof. Something they can't bury. A cold weight settled in my chest. Why me? Because you're new. They don't know you, and you're good at being invisible. He smiled without humor. That's why. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to laugh in his face. This wasn't what I signed up for. I just wanted to shoot weddings and charity galas, not play spy games. But another part of me, the part that grew restless without risk, leaned forward. All right, I said finally. I'll do it. Friday came too fast. I dressed in all black, hoodie, cap, cargo pants. I parked 2 blocks from the bungalow and walked the rest of the way. The street was dark, quiet, the kind of forgotten corner people avoided. The bungalow itself sagged with age. Boards covered the windows. The front porch leaned like it might collapse. I slipped around the back and into the basement just like Grant had told me. He said there'd be a spot where I could hide, with a perfect view of the room. I clicked on my flashlight. The basement was nearly empty, but not untouched. Candles lined the floor in a circle. Dark stains, blood, spattered the concrete. I swallowed hard, raised my camera and snapped a few shots. Then I heard footsteps, voices. I killed the light and ducked into the hiding spot, heart hammering. One by one they entered, men and women in red hooded robes, 11 of them. I raised my camera and clicked silently, lens catching flashes of familiar faces. The mayor, the hospital's chief surgeon, a wealthy property developer. They formed a circle around the candles. The time has come, one of them intoned. The oath must be renewed. The circle must be complete. A shiver crawled up my spine. Since the death of Gordon, we are 11, another said. Tonight we welcome the 12th. My finger hovered on the shutter button. Who was the 12th? Bring him in, a voice commanded. 2 figures dragged a bleeding goat into the center. Its hooves scraped against the floor. I lifted my camera and snapped, and then a hand touched my shoulder. I jerked around. Shh, a familiar voice whispered. Mr. Grant. Relief washed over me, then froze into horror. He wore a red robe. My throat closed. He leaned close, his breath hot against my ear. Follow me. Do it and you'll live. Refuse, and you won't walk out of here. I stared at him, my whole body trembling. The circle was waiting. Faces turned toward me, hooded but smiling faintly, like they already knew who I was. Grant guided me forward, and in that moment, everything clicked. I wasn't the photographer. I was the 12th, 6 months later. I sit at my desk, staring at the pictures on my laptop. Photos of people smiling at galas, kids holding balloons, couples cutting cakes. The kind of photos everyone thinks define me. No one sees the other shots, the ones hidden on encrypted drives, the evidence of what I've done. Every Friday the Brotherhood meets. Every Friday we plan things, dirty things. And every week, I'm tasked with carrying them out. A call here, a delivery there, sometimes worse. I thought I could escape, thought I could outsmart them. But once you're inside, there's no leaving. I'm not writing this as a warning. I'm writing it because I want you to know the truth. You think your world is yours. You think you're free. You're not. You're a pawn, just like me. And the worst part? I don't know if I hate them more, or myself. I was 22 when I started working nights at a gas station just outside a little town in Missouri called Ashford. Not a big place. One of those highway stops where you've got a diner, a liquor store, 2 motels, and the gas station where I worked, all lined up along the same stretch of road. I wasn't from Ashford originally. I'd moved there from Kansas City a few months before to live with my cousin while I figured my life out. I was broke, jobless, and too stubborn to move back in with my parents, so when I saw the hiring sign taped crookedly on the gas station door, I walked in. The manager, Darlene, was in her mid-40s, smokes a pack a day, raspy voice, hair tied back with a scrunchie from the 90s. She asked me 3 questions. You good with staying up late? You know how to count change? You ever call in sick just 'cause you don't feel like working? When I told her I was fine with nights, decent at math, and needed the money too bad to call out, she hired me on the spot. That's how I ended up working Thursday through Saturday, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. at Ashford Fuel and Mart. It was steady, lonely, and easy. I stocked shelves, wiped down counters, restocked the cooler with beer and energy drinks, and waited on the occasional trucker or drunk kid from the bar down the road. Most nights, the hardest part was staying awake. But 2 months in, things changed. It started on a Thursday night around 2:30 a.m. I'd been in the back mopping when the door chime dinged. It was Luke, the guy who worked the weekday shifts, and his buddy Trevor. Luke was 25, tall and lanky, the kind of guy who always wore a baseball cap backwards and acted like everything was a joke. Trevor, I didn't know well, but he had that dazed, too happy grin plastered on his face, and I quickly realized why. Both of them had been tripping on mushrooms. Yo, Jess. Luke grinned as he walked in, already beelining for the coffee machine. Figured we'd check on you. Don't want you falling asleep and drooling on the counter. Trevor started laughing way too hard at that. Drooling. Dude, imagine. Customers come in and she's just out cold. I rolled my eyes but smiled. You two are idiots. Coffee's on the left. Try not to spill it everywhere. They were entertaining, honestly. Drunk or high customers were nothing new to me, but when it's your coworker acting goofy, it feels different. We talked about dumb stuff. Trevor insisted the ceiling tiles looked like a map of the U.S., and Luke teased him until they both nearly choked on their coffee. Then Trevor suddenly stopped mid-laugh and said, Hey, you see that car out there? What car? I asked. The one parked way back by the dumpster. Lights off, but engine running. There's somebody in it. Been there since before we pulled in, I frowned. DoorDash drivers sometimes sat in the lot waiting for orders, but I hadn't had an order in hours. Probably just waiting on food or something. Trevor shook his head. Nah, man, I asked him. He said he was waiting on a delivery, but he didn't have the app open. He just looked off. Luke waved it off. You're high, Trev. Don't freak Jess out. But I caught the way Luke glanced out the window, chewing his lip. He didn't buy it either. After a while, Luke and Trevor went back outside with Luke's dog, a pit mix named Rosie. They were tossing a ball around, smoking cigars, and just being loud in the lot. I stayed inside, finishing up the mop job, but after about an hour they came back in for more coffee. Luke leaned on the counter. Okay, not to freak you out, but that car? It's still there. Whole time we were out with Rosie, the guy kept watching us, like he'd look down at his phone, type something, then stare at us again. Back and forth, Trevor nodded, jittery. I went over and asked him what his deal was. At first he acted like he didn't speak English. Then suddenly he did, said he had the wrong address and peeled out of there. But get this. Luke cut in. When he left, another car pulled in. Brand new. No plates. Parked in the shadows. As soon as the first guy left, the second one followed him out. Didn't even stop for gas. My stomach nodded. Wait, no plates? On either of them? Yeah, no temporary tags either. Just nothing. I tried to play it cool, but my pulse was thudding. That's sketchy. You think they were casing the place? Luke shrugged, but his eyes were serious. Don't know. But if me and Trev hadn't been out there, it would have just been you alone in here. That thought made my hands go cold. The next night, Friday, I was hoping it had all been nothing. Just random weirdos. But around 3 a.m., 4 guys came in for coffee and snacks. They looked like mechanics or maybe farmhands, dirty jeans, calloused hands. While I was ringing them up, one asked, Hey, You know whose car that is? Been sitting out by the fence with the lights off, I froze. What car? He gestured with his thumb. Looks like a new Subaru. No plates. Two guys inside arguing, pointing at the store. My stomach dropped. I told them what had happened the night before. The tallest guy, broad shoulders, serious face, exchanged a look with his buddy. That's not right. We walked past, and they shut up real quick. As soon as they saw us, they reversed and took off. The men offered to hang around for a bit, said they didn't like the idea of me being out there alone. They stayed about 20 minutes, drinking coffee, making small talk about hunting season. When they finally left, they told me to stay safe. I let them refill their cups for free, grateful beyond words. The car didn't come back that night. But now, I couldn't shake the thought. Why twice? Why here? Why me? Saturday night, my last shift of the week, started normal. A couple of truckers, some drunk kids from town, nothing weird. But around 3:15 a.m., the chime dinged again. Two men walked in, both clean-cut, early 30s, dressed in jeans and dark hoodies. Too clean for travelers, too sharp for drunks. The way they looked around made my skin crawl. One went to the cooler, the other stood by the counter, staring at me. "Quiet night?" the one at the counter asked. "Yeah," I said carefully. "Just the usual." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Bet it gets lonely out here." The other man came up with 2 bottles of water. He dropped cash on the counter without me telling him the total. Exact change. That detail hit me hard, like they'd rehearsed it. As they turned to leave, I noticed something through the glass. A brand new black SUV, engine running, parked by the fence line. No plates. They didn't pump gas, didn't grab snacks, just water. And when they left, they didn't drive off. They walked straight to the SUV and got in. I ducked behind the counter and dialed Luke. He answered groggy. "Jess? You okay?" "Luke, they're back." The car, no plates. 2 guys came in, just staring at me. "They're sitting out there right now." Luke cursed. "Lock the doors." "I'm on my way." While I waited, the SUV just sat there, idling. Headlights off. I swear I could see the silhouette of someone in the back seat, shifting under a pile of blankets. 5 minutes stretched into 20. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I'd throw up. Then, just as Luke's truck pulled into the lot, the SUV headlights flicked on. It pulled out slow, then sped onto the highway, gone in seconds. Luke ran in, out of breath. "You okay?" I nodded shakily, trying not to cry in front of him. He looked me dead in the eye. "Jess, don't work nights alone anymore. Not until Darlene installs cameras out there. That wasn't random. They were planning something I didn't argue. I quit 2 weeks later, told Darlene it wasn't worth the risk. She acted like I was being dramatic, but I knew better. I never saw that SUV again, but sometimes when I drive at night, I catch myself checking every mirror, making sure no one's tailing me. And I think about one thing Luke said, something that still chills me. They weren't in a rush, Jess. They were patient, like they were waiting for the right night. I never thought I'd end up working nights at a gas station. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I would have said I'd be doing something else, anything else. I grew up in a small town in Kansas, worked odd jobs through high school, then moved down to Oklahoma thinking I'd figure life out. Instead, I found myself stuck at a quick fuel off Highway 169 in Broken Arrow. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the rent on my crappy apartment and kept my old Chevy running. Most nights it was slow, truckers rolling through for diesel, a handful of locals grabbing smokes or beer before midnight cutoff, sometimes college kids stopping in for energy drinks. My shift ran from 10:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., and I worked it alone. The bosses liked it that way. Less payroll. The cameras were always working, but half the time the monitors froze and the back lock stuck if you didn't slam it just right. I told myself it was fine. It was just me, the humming coolers, and the buzzing neon sign outside. And here's the thing about nights. Silence gets heavy. It's not like daytime quiet. It presses down on you, makes your own thoughts too loud. I'd hum to myself sometimes just to remind my brain I wasn't the last person alive on Earth. But in July, when the heat sat on the pavement like a second skin, the silence got worse. That's when it happened. It was a Wednesday night, close to midnight, and I was halfway through my routine, counting the register, sorting scratch-offs, setting up the trash bags for my first run out back. The AC unit wheezed but couldn't keep up, so the air inside smelled faintly of warm plastic, like the candy was melting on the shelves. No one had come in for almost an hour, not since a delivery driver bought 2 Red Bulls and a pack of beef jerky around 11:05. I was actually thinking about stepping outside just to breathe real air, sticky or not. That's when the bell over the door jingled. A man walked in. He looked about mid-40s, polo shirt tucked into jeans, shoes scuffed like he'd been running in them. He had a sweaty, rushed look, forehead glistening under the fluorescent lights. He held his phone in one hand but wasn't looking at it. His eyes were darting, sharp, like he was scanning the place for something. Before I could even say evening, he started talking. "Hey man, sorry, my wife's in labor. We're trying to get to Hillcrest and can I use your restroom real quick?" I nodded toward the hallway. Public restrooms just back there, around the corner. He looked, then shook his head fast. Nah, I mean the employee one. It's urgent. Please." The way he said please wasn't desperate, it was sharp, pushy. He took a step closer, angling toward the side door behind my counter like he meant to just walk back. I shifted my stance, blocking him. "Sorry, man. Can't. Store policy." He froze, then smiled. Too wide, too quick. "Come on. She's in the car. I just need a second. The public one was locked at the last place. I've been holding it." Something about the way he said she's in the car made my stomach knot. I didn't move. I just looked him dead on. His eyes flicked, not at me, not at the restroom sign, toward the mounted camera above the stockroom door. That was when my gut told me something was wrong. I reached up and pressed the little mic button on my walkie. It wasn't connected to anyone, but he didn't know that. "Yeah," I said loud, clear. "Can you come up front a sec?" His eyes snapped back to me. He blinked, quick. "You working alone?" he asked, almost too casual. "Second guy's in the back," I lied smoothly. "He'll be out in a minute." We just stood there, me planted in his path, him deciding something. Then, as quick as he'd shifted before, he smiled again. "All good, man. Didn't mean to freak you out." He backed off slow, wandered toward the coolers like he was browsing, picked up a bottle of water, then meandered through the gum and chips like it was the most normal night in the world. I didn't take my eyes off him, not once. Finally, he came up to the counter, set the water down. "Long night, huh?" he said like we were pals. "Yep." I scanned the bottle. $1.89. He handed me a 5, and here's the part that unsettled me. He never broke eye contact. Not while I made change, not while I handed him his receipt. His stare felt heavy, testing. Then he gave a single nod and walked out. I leaned to watch through the side window, expecting him to climb into a car. But he didn't. He walked around the corner of the building and vanished. No headlights, no ignition, just gone. My throat was dry. I told myself maybe his car was parked on the side. Maybe his wife was actually out there. Maybe. But I didn't believe it. 5 minutes ticked by. I tried to focus on restocking the counter candy, but my hands kept drifting toward the crowbar under the register. Finally, I grabbed the trash bag, slipped gloves on, and cracked the back door. The alley behind the store was hot. The air trapped like an oven. The dumpster sat in its concrete cove, a faint glow spilling from a streetlight 30 feet away. I stepped out, let the door fall shut behind me, started walking toward the dumpster. Halfway there, I heard it. Soft scuff, like a shoe dragging against dirt. I turned. He was standing there, behind the dumpster. No smile this time. No water bottle. Just holding something dark, and wrinkled in his hands. Looked like rubber gloves. His breathing was shallow, fast, like he'd been working himself up. We stared at each other, neither of us speaking. My instinct screamed. I turned, walked fast, calm but fast, back to the door. My hand hit the handle. For a second, panic. What if it jammed? Sometimes you had to yank it. This time it opened easy. I stepped inside, slammed it shut, twisted the lock hard. My heart was pounding in my ears. I grabbed the phone, called non-emergency. Told them a man had been loitering behind the store, possibly tried to enter. 12 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up. 2 officers came in. I walked them through everything. They checked the alley with flashlights, circled the building. The man was gone, but they found something. In the dirt behind the dumpster, footprints, pressed deep like someone had been standing there a long time, and a single black rubber glove, turned inside out. One officer picked it up with his pen. "Door might have saved your life tonight," he said. They offered to stay while I finished lockup, but I still had 6 hours ahead. I told them I'd be fine. Was I? Maybe. Maybe not. That night I double-checked every lock. Didn't tell my manager, didn't want to lose the shift. I liked nights. At least I used to. Now there's a crowbar behind the counter, another by the back door, and when I take out the trash, I move quick. One hand on the bag, the other on the handle. I never imagined I'd still be working night shifts at 24. When I was younger, I thought I'd be on some bigger path by now. College degree finished, maybe a steady job in the city, something with benefits and a little stability. But life doesn't exactly bend the way you plan. My dad had a stroke when I was 20, and whatever savings I had tucked away went to hospital bills and keeping the lights on at home. Mom worked mornings at the diner in town, and I started picking up every shift I could to help. That's how I ended up at Hollow Pines Gas and Go, a tiny 24-hour station off Route 17. It's the kind of place truckers pull into when they've been on the road too long, or locals stop at when they're desperate for smokes after midnight. People drive past without even realizing it's there. Just a glowing island of humming, fluorescent lights surrounded by fields and trees. I liked the job at first. Nights were quiet, predictable. That's what drew me in. There's something oddly comforting about restocking candy bars at 2 in the morning, or listening to the ice machine groan in the background while the world outside feels paused. I'd been doing the night shift steady for almost a year. By then I knew the regulars. Old man Price, who always bought scratch-offs but never scratched them until he got home. Jen from the nursing home, who fueled up every Thursday night around 2:30 on her way to work. The truckers who rotated through like clockwork. And then there was him. It started on a Wednesday. Cold January air, frost creeping along the glass doors, and the buzzing of the overhang lights making me grind my teeth. Around 1 in the morning, the door chimed. He walked in. Mid-40s, maybe older. He wore a weather-worn brown jacket and had hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it one too many times. His lips were dry, cracked, like he hadn't smiled in years. He didn't go for coffee or jerky like most people. He just stood near the counter, staring at me like he was trying to place where he'd seen me before. "Evening," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "You always work this late?" he asked. Something about the way he said it, like he already knew the answer, made my stomach tighten. "Mostly," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. He nodded slowly, eyes flicking over the counter, then back to me. "Figured. I've passed by a few times. Seems like it's always you here." I forced a smile. Small town, not a lot of staff, but he didn't leave. He just stood there, like silence was his language. Then he said, "Your name's Lila, right?" I froze. I wasn't wearing a name tag. Before I could ask how he knew, he gestured to the little whiteboard propped near the coffee station where I'd written in red marker, "Cinnamon hazelnut is back, $1.49. "You've got nice handwriting," he said. "Most people dot their I's like little circles. You use slashes. It's distinct." thoughtful. I didn't know how to respond. After a beat too long, he gave a slight nod. I'm Ray. Just curious, that's all. And then he walked out, disappearing into the fog. At first, I chalked it up to weird small-town vibes. People notice things here. People gossip. But then he started showing up again. Not every night. Not enough to call it stalking outright. But often enough that I couldn't pretend it was coincidence anymore. Sometimes he came inside. Sometimes he just sat in his car at the edge of the lot with his headlights off. One night, he bought a bottle of water and lingered near the counter. "You're quieter tonight," he said. "Long shift," I muttered, not looking up. He tilted his head, scanning the store like he was memorizing it. "It must get lonely. Just you out here in the dark. No one else for miles." "I'm fine," I replied. He leaned closer, voice calm, like he was asking about the weather. "You ever get scared? Being a woman out here alone?" That tone, curious, not threatening, made it worse. "Do you need anything else?" I asked, stepping back. "I noticed you always keep the back room locked." "Smart," he said, almost like he was complimenting me. "You check it around 2 o'clock every night." My stomach nodded. "I'll let you get back to it," he said softly. "Didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." And then he left. After that, I started walking to my car with my keys between my fingers, knuckles white. I shoved a tire iron under the counter. I changed the curtains in my apartment. I showered with the bathroom door locked even when I was alone. Sometimes I wouldn't see him for a week, but the silence of his absence made it worse. Every creak of the store, every pair of headlights on the road, made my chest tighten. Then came the night I walked back from my 10-minute break and found a Polaroid on the counter. It was me, outside by the windshield washer bin, taken that night. Up close. Too close. The word windshield on the bin had my slashed I circled in red ink. I called him out the next time he came in. "You need to leave," I said, voice shaking. "If you stay, I'll call the cops." He looked almost apologetic. "I get it. I've been too forward. You've been following me," I snapped. "I just thought, you're the kind of person people misunderstand. I thought maybe you'd appreciate someone who notices." "That's not noticing," I said. "That's obsession." He didn't flinch. "Would it make you feel better if I bought a soda every night, made small talk about sports, pretended I didn't notice your shoes are a half size too big or how your eyelid twitches when you're tired?" By then, my hand was already dialing 911. He didn't stop me. He just stood there, waiting. The cops arrived fast. He didn't resist. They searched his car and found a notebook. Inside, pages of my schedule, my clothes, notes about my groceries. One page just had my name written over and over again, smaller and smaller, until it was nothing but black loops. He kept saying the same thing as they cuffed him. "I just notice things. I'm just a curious guy." The restraining order went through that week. I don't work nights anymore. The company transferred me to a different station 2 hours away. I live in a small duplex now, new curtains, new locks. But the truth? It didn't end when they took him away. Every time headlights stay behind me too long, I feel the back of my neck prickle. Every time someone lingers near the counter, I feel my throat tighten. And sometimes, when it's too quiet in my apartment, I swear I can hear his voice in my head, calm, curious, practiced, saying my name like he'd been waiting all his life just to try it out loud. I never thought working the night shift at a motel would mess with my head the way it did. My name's Aaron. I'm 29, and for the last year, I've been the overnight clerk at the Maple Leaf Inn, a little family-run motel off Highway 72, about 20 minutes outside a town called Ridgeway in northern Missouri. It's the kind of spot people only stop at if they're traveling through, usually long-haul truckers or families that got too tired to keep driving. I wasn't planning on working here forever. Truth is, I only took the job because I needed something steady after I left my job at the lumber mill. I got laid off when they downsized, and after a couple months of floating, The bills were stacking up. My cousin's friend owned the motel and said, "It's easy money. Nobody bothers you. Just check people in, answer the phone if it rings, and keep an eye on things." I figured, why not? I'm not the most social guy. Talking to people drains me, and working nights meant I didn't have to fake small talk or smile when I didn't want to. I could just sit in the back office, drink coffee, and maybe watch a game replay or scroll my phone. The motel itself is small. 2 floors, about 20 rooms. The office has that dated charm, with floral carpet that hasn't been changed since the 90s, a front counter with a brass bell on it, and a coffee machine that sputters more than it brews. Behind the desk, there's a narrow hallway that leads to a little office/lounge. That's where I spend most of my nights. There's a beat-up couch, a desk, a mini fridge stocked with sodas, and a small TV on the wall. A speaker back there dings if someone rings the bell up front so I don't miss check-ins. The first couple months it was fine, boring even. The only noises at night were the heater kicking on, the buzz of the old fluorescent lights, and the occasional sound of a guest fumbling with the front door lock after midnight. But boredom plays tricks on you. When it's quiet for too long, you start noticing every creak of the building, every hum of the vending machine, every faint shuffle that might just be the pipes. You tell yourself it's normal. Still, something about the night shift sharpens your nerves. And then came the Tuesday night in late October when things stopped feeling normal. It was about 1:50 a.m. I was stretched out on the couch in the back, scrolling through my phone, when the bell rang. The sound cut through the quiet so sharply, I nearly dropped my phone. "Shit," I muttered, setting it down. I stood up, walked down the hall, and stepped into the lobby. The bell was still wobbling a little from the hit, but the lobby was empty. "Hello?" I called out, peering through the glass doors. The parking lot outside was nearly empty, just 5 cars, same as earlier, all belonging to guests who'd checked in before midnight. The road out front was dark and deserted, not even a pair of headlights in the distance. I frowned. Maybe somebody came in, rang the bell, and then left. Maybe they realized they had the wrong motel. It happens sometimes. I stood there for a good minute, waiting to see if the door opened again. Nothing. So I went back to the lounge, poured myself some stale coffee, and sat at the desk instead of the couch. 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. This time I moved quicker, stepping into the lobby almost immediately, but it was empty again. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. "All right," I muttered under my breath. "Somebody's screwing with me." I pushed the doors open and stepped outside. The cold air bit at my face. I walked along the sidewalk, scanning the lot with my phone's flashlight. Not a soul in sight. Just the cars, parked neat in their spaces. No footprints on the wet pavement. No shadows darting behind the vending machine. I went back inside and sat behind the front desk this time. If someone was playing ding-dong ditch, I'd catch them in the act. The lobby was dim, just the glow of the lamp by the chairs and the faint hum of the soda machine. I kept my eyes locked on the bell. 10 minutes passed. 15. My eyelids got heavy. The steady tick of the clock on the wall almost lulled me to sleep. And then, ding. I snapped awake. And I saw it this time. A pale hand reached up from under the counter and pressed the bell. My blood ran cold. "Jesus Christ!" I shouted, stumbling back so hard the chair nearly toppled. The hand disappeared. My chest pounded as I darted down the hallway and into the lounge. I slammed the door shut and twisted the lock, breathing hard. For a second, I just stood there staring at the door, trying to wrap my head around it. The desk had space underneath, sure, but barely enough for someone to crouch. Whoever that was, they'd been right there, inches away while I sat at the desk. My hands shook as I turned to the security monitors mounted on the wall. 4 feeds, 2 for the lot, 1 for the lobby, 1 for the hallway. On the lobby feed, I saw the desk. The chair I'd left there was tipped over. Nothing else moved. Then, in the bottom corner of the frame, I saw a head slowly rise up from behind the counter. I froze. The figure's hood was pulled tight around its face, but the glint of eyes caught the camera. They stared straight into the lens, straight at me. "Holy shit," I whispered, my throat dry. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. When the dispatcher answered, I kept my voice low. "There's somebody in the motel," I whispered. "They're in the lobby, hiding behind the front desk." "Are you safe right now?" the dispatcher asked. I'm locked in the back office. They don't know I'm in here," I said, though I wasn't sure if that was true. On the monitor, the figure crawled out from behind the counter and stood up. Tall, hunched, hoodie pulled tight. They started pacing the lobby slowly, head twitching like they were looking for something. Then they walked straight toward the hallway. My stomach dropped. A second later, the knob on the office door rattled. Just once. Slow and deliberate. I pressed both hands against the door, my whole body shaking. The dispatcher's voice buzzed in my ear. "Sir? Stay calm. Officers are on their way. Do not open the door." I couldn't answer. My throat was locked. The rattling stopped. Silence. Then, I heard footsteps moving away. I forced myself to look back at the monitor. The man was in the lobby again, standing by the glass doors. He just stood there, staring outside like he was waiting for someone. Then, casually, he walked to the brochure rack and started flipping through the pamphlets like he was killing time. Every second stretched forever. Finally, red and blue lights flashed across the parking lot feed. 2 cruisers pulled up. The man bolted out of frame. I heard the front doors slam open. Shouts of "Sheriff's Department" echoed through the lobby. When the deputies cleared the building, they didn't find him. They found a rock propping the door open. They said he must have slipped out as soon as they arrived. But I know what I saw. That hand, those eyes staring right into the camera, the slow rattle of the knob. I never worked a shift at that motel again. Every time I close my eyes, I see that pale hand creeping up over the counter, pressing the bell like it was nothing more than a game. I never thought a warehouse job would be the thing that ruined my sleep for the rest of my life. I was 27 when it happened. At the time, I was working nights as a shift manager at a distribution center just outside of Joliet, Illinois. It wasn't some giant Amazon plant with robots buzzing around, no. This was a good old-fashioned concrete warehouse built in the late 70s. Dusty rafters, rusting support beams, and row after row of tall steel shelving units stacked with pallets, boxes, and shrink-wrapped freight that always seemed one wrong move from toppling. I'd taken the job after I got laid off from a car parts factory. The warehouse wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to keep me afloat. The night shift was slow and steady. Unload trucks, stock the shelves, prep the orders for morning drivers. I had a crew of 5 working under me. We were like a little family if families were made of exhausted, nicotine-stained misfits who chain-drank gas station coffee and griped about bosses who'd never once worked a night shift. My crew that winter consisted of Luis, 31, lean and restless, a father of 2 who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. He had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Tommy, 24, the youngest, baby-faced and jumpy, who was trying to save up for trade school. Ray, 42, big guy with a gut, quick with a joke, the type who'd break tension by singing old rock songs at 2 in the morning. Sarah, 29, quiet but tough as hell, never put up with anyone's crap, not even mine. And Calvin, 35, wiry, sarcastic, always fiddling with his vape or talking about conspiracy theories. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. And for a while it was just a job. Until the night started changing. It began small. Boxes moved when no one was near them. A stack of shrink-wrapped pallets that had been perfectly stable would suddenly shift and collapse like something pushed them. The first time it happened, I thought maybe one of the forklifts clipped it. But the cameras never showed anything. Then the lights. The overhead fluorescents were old and finicky, but entire rows of them started shutting off at once, plunging sections of the warehouse into thick darkness. At first, maintenance said it was wiring issues, but when they checked, the circuits were fine. The worst part, though, was the feeling. You know that creeping sensation that someone's watching you? We all felt it. Sometimes you'd catch a glimpse of movement between the shelves, like something ducking just out of sight. At first, everyone laughed it off warehouse air currents, rats, shadows. But laughter only goes so far when it keeps happening night after night. One night around 1 a.m., I went to check aisle 19 after hearing a crash. I thought it was just another stack tipping, but when I turned down the aisle, every single box along one side had been shoved outward about an inch, perfectly aligned, like a giant hand had swept through. I froze. My flashlight beam caught dust drifting in the air, but nothing else. No rats, no forklifts, no people. Just silence, and then scurrying. Not footsteps, faster, lower to the ground. The shelves trembled as if something large and fast darted past me. I didn't tell the crew that night, didn't want to spook them. But the next evening, Luis cornered me by the time clock. "Boss, you seen it yet?" he asked. "Seen what?" I lied. He gave me this look like, "Don't play dumb. The thing moving around. We all know it's there. Ain't no raccoon running through steel beams, man." That was the first time any of us admitted it out loud. Over the next week, things escalated. Screams started echoing in the dark. Not human screams exactly, but distorted like someone yelling into a busted speaker. The lights would cut out in patterns, almost like it was pushing us where it wanted. We reported it upstairs. Our supervisor laughed in our faces. "Ghost stories don't pay invoices. Get back to work before I start cutting hours." So, it was on us. By Thursday, we'd had enough. Ray slammed his hand on the break room table. "Either we do something about this or I'm walking. I'm not coming back here to be some goddamn chew toy." Sarah nodded. "He's right. It's hunting us. You feel it." Tommy's voice shook. "So what? What do we do?" "You can't shoot a ghost. We don't even know what it is," Calvin muttered. "Could be some feral thing living in the walls. Could be worse. I read about. No conspiracy crap," I cut in. "We make a plan. Tonight." We decided on a trap. Each of us would hide near the warehouse's 5 major light switches. When the thing killed the lights, the person stationed there would scream our signal to rush in and catch it. It wasn't much of a plan, but we were desperate. By 2 a.m., we were in position, boxes stacked in front of us as cover. I could hear Tommy's breathing, even from across the room, fast and shallow. Sweat prickled under my collar, sliding down my back. Minutes dragged into hours. Nothing. Just the hum of fluorescence and the occasional creak of metal shelves. I thought maybe the thing knew we were waiting. Maybe it was watching. Then click. The northern row went dark. "Ah!" It was Ray's voice, loud and raw. At first it sounded like the planned signal, but then it twisted. His scream cracked, turned sharp, high-pitched, guttural. "Go, go," I yelled. We broke cover, sprinting toward him. My boots pounded the concrete. Sarah and Luis flanked left. Calvin bolted ahead of me. Tommy stumbled, nearly tripping. Ray's screams changed pain now. Agonized, animal-like wails that made my stomach lurch. By the time we got there, it was too late. Ray was on the ground, and what was left of him barely looked human. His body was torn open like something had raked through him with impossible force. His throat was shredded, chest cavity cracked like a split log. Sarah gagged. Tommy dropped to his knees, sobbing. Luis just whispered, "Holy shit, holy shit," over and over. That's when the sound hit us, a howl. Not a wolf, not a dog. Deeper. Wet. It vibrated the shelves, rattling metal against metal. I shouted, "Grab him, we're not leaving him here." We hauled what we could of Ray onto a pallet jack and dragged it toward the loading dock. The lights started flickering, then boom darkness again, and footsteps. Heavy, pounding, shaking the racks. 4 distinct thuds, fast, closing in. "Move, move," I screamed. We shoved the dock door open, tumbled outside into the freezing air, and barricaded it with anything we could grab. Pallets, chains, broken shrink wrap rolls. Then we called every emergency number we had, sitting in our cars, eyes darting to the warehouse door, waiting for sirens. The cops came first. They looked at us like we were crazy until they saw Ray's body. Then more cars, ambulances, county officials. The next day, corporate showed up in pressed suits. They told us nothing, just handed us thick envelopes, severance packages, and made us sign NDAs. A week later, the warehouse was shuttered. 2 weeks after, demolished. The company said it was due to infrastructure instability. But those of us who were there, me, Sarah, Luis, Calvin, and Tommy, we know. Demolishing the building didn't destroy whatever was inside. It was never about the walls. It was about the thing that lived in the dark. And I swear sometimes, late at night, when I'm driving past empty industrial lots, I see movement in the shadows of those steel skeletons. And I wonder if it's looking for us again. I never thought I'd end up working nights. If you asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said I was more of a morning person, the type who liked coffee before sunrise and early jogs when the air was still damp. But life doesn't ask you what you prefer. Life tells you what you can afford. And what I could afford was the overnight shift at Iron Haven Fitness, a 24/7 gym just off Route 71, on the edge of Dayton, Ohio. It wasn't glamorous. The pay was just above minimum wage, but the hours were steady. And steady mattered. My car insurance was 3 months late. I had medical bills from a sprained ankle that still weren't covered. And my old apartment complex had just bumped rent another $100. Nights were the only option they had left when I applied. I told myself it wouldn't be so bad. Quiet, easy money, no bosses breathing down my neck. And for the most part, that was true. Nights at the gym fell into rhythm fast. By midnight, the day crowd was long gone. The chatter, the clanking plates, the blasting playlists, it all tapered down to this low hum of white noise. Only a handful of people drifted in between midnight and 3 a.m., and most of them were predictable. There was Nora, a nurse who came straight from her shift at Miami Valley Hospital. She'd run 6, sometimes 7 miles on the treadmill, her scrubs still folded in her bag. We didn't talk much, just a nod at the front desk, sometimes a quiet mourning when she left, but she was steady. Then there were Trey and Luis, 2 powerlifters who always came in together, blasting their own playlist through a shared Bluetooth speaker. Big dudes, early 30 seconds, but polite. Trey once brought me a coffee because he figured you were dying out here by yourself. There was also Paul, a college kid from Wright State who drank 2 monsters before even touching a dumbbell, then jittered through his routine like he was racing against an invisible clock. Those were the regulars, the safe ones. When you work nights long enough, you start categorizing people, not by names, but by reasons. The ones training for something, the ones running from something, and the ones who just didn't like people. I got it. Nights gave you cover. No one stared, no one judged. You could be anonymous here. For me, nights were about survival. Bills, rent, breathing space. My shift always started at 11:30 p.m. I'd clock in, check the towel bins, spray down the equipment, restock the little fridge with Gatorades and protein shakes. By 1 a.m., I was usually on autopilot scrolling my phone, half reading some article, sometimes just spinning in the office chair behind the desk. That Tuesday in January started the same, freezing outside 5 degrees, maybe colder. My breath fogged as I walked from the car to the door, keys rattling in my hand. I remember thinking my tires felt stiff, like the cold was sucking the air right out of them. The gym was warm though, lights bright, floor spotless, same low buzz of machines humming in standby. I settled in with a thermos of coffee, telling myself it was just another long night, but I had that feeling in my gut, the kind you can't explain. Like static before a storm. At first I brushed it off. By 1:30, I'd wipe down the counter, restock the fridge, and check the locker rooms. Empty, clean, echoing. I came back out, poured the last of my coffee into a paper cup, and leaned back in the chair. The cameras showed calm. Nora was halfway through her treadmill run. Paul was jittering between machines like always. That's when the glass doors slid open. He came in alone. No gym bag, no sneakers, no water bottle. Just jeans, a dark puffer jacket, and this smile that felt too quick, too practiced. He didn't scan a card, didn't even glance at the scanner. I pushed myself up from the chair. "Hey man, you got a membership card?" He shook his head, still smiling. "Nah, just waiting on my cousin. Said he'd meet me here." His voice was smooth, but his eyes were restless. He scanned the room like he was cataloging everything, the equipment, the exits, the people. "Okay," I said slowly. "That's fine. Visitors can wait up front, but you can't go past the main lobby, all right?" "Yeah, no problem." He nodded, smile stretching. Instead of sitting, he walked toward the windows by the treadmills. He didn't pull out a phone, didn't check the time, just stood with his hands in his jacket pockets, watching. At first, I wanted to believe him. Maybe his cousin was late, maybe he was bored. But the longer he stayed, the more wrong it felt. 15 minutes passed, then 20. He didn't move like someone waiting. He moved like someone circling. Slow laps around the perimeter, hands buried deep, eyes skimming everyone in sight. He passed by Nora twice. The second time, she caught my eye in the mirror, lifted her brows like, "What's his deal?" I gave a half shrug, but inside my chest was tightening. Eventually, he drifted back toward the desk. "You always work this shift?" he asked. I forced a chuckle. "Nah, just covering. Usually mornings." "Lie. I always worked nights." He tilted his head. "What time you get off?" 9. I lied again. "Long shift tonight." He nodded like he was storing that away. Then he walked off, slower this time, gaze lingering on Paul, then on Nora. Around 2:40, the door slid open again. Trey and Luis came in, bundled against the cold. They nodded at me on the way to the free weights. I caught the stranger watching them immediately. His eyes flicked over their size, their presence. A few minutes later, he circled back to the entrance. "Guess he bailed on me," he said, same stretched smile. "Have a good one." He slipped out into the night. I walked over to the front windows, pretending to check the thermostat. Really, I was watching him. He didn't get into a car, didn't walk toward the street. He drifted to the far corner of the lot, the part where the lights didn't reach, and just stood there until the shadows swallowed him. My stomach sank. The rest of the shift, I kept myself busy, cleaned things that didn't need cleaning, pretended it was nothing. But every time the doors hissed open, my chest jumped. By 7 a.m., the gym was thinning. Nora left first, sweat still gleaming on her forehead. Trey and Luis followed, laughing quietly about some podcast. By 7:30, it was just me. I clocked out, grabbed my bag, zipped up my jacket, and headed for my car at the far end of the lot. That's when I saw it. A car idling in the corner. No headlights, just exhaust curling into the frozen air, lit by the dull orange glow of the lot lamps. My chest tightened. I slowed slightly, then forced myself to keep walking. My keys were already in my hand. I hit unlock from 10 feet away. The flash of my headlights cut through the dark. I climbed in fast, locked the doors, started the engine. The idling car flicked its headlights once. Not on full. Just a flash, like it was saying, "I see you." My breath caught. I didn't wait. I reversed hard, tires squealing, and tore out of the lot, not caring if I scraped the curb. At the first red light, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. I called Maddie, my best friend. She answered groggy. "Jesus, you sound freaked out," she said. "Something's off." I told her. "I think someone's following me. Can I crash at your place?" Yeah, just get here safe, okay?" I drove loops for half an hour. Checked my mirrors constantly. No car behind me. Still, it felt like eyes boring into the back of my neck. Eventually, I pulled into a speedway station under the brightest lights in town. I just sat there with the engine running, heart hammering. When I finally made it to Maddie's, she didn't push. She just handed me a blanket and let me take the couch. But I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flick of headlights. The next night, I told my manager, Bill. He was an older guy, ex-Marine, no nonsense. He didn't laugh. Didn't say I was paranoid. He just walked me back to the office and pulled up the security footage. And there he was. Same jacket, same pacing, same fake smile when he talked to me. We fast-forwarded. He circled the gym floor, never touching equipment. Always watching. Then Bill pulled up the feed from the next night. The stranger came back. Didn't come inside. Just stood in the far corner of the lot, hands in his pockets, face tilted toward the building. For nearly an hour, my chest went cold. We called the police. 2 officers showed up 20 minutes later, took my statement, asked Bill to save the footage, said they'd file a report and add patrols, but I could tell by their tone they couldn't do much unless he did something. As they were leaving, one of the officers grabbed the front door handle to step outside. That's when he froze. There was a note tucked into the handle. Folded tight, no envelope. He handed it to me. 1 line, blocky handwriting. "You looked cold last night. I could have kept you warm." My blood turned to ice. The officers bagged it as evidence, promised to add patrols, but that didn't make me feel safer. The next day, I asked Bill to move me to day shifts. He didn't argue. Months later, I still can't shake it. Even now, when I pull into a parking lot at night, I check the corners first. Every time. I lock the doors the second I sit down. I never saw him again. But sometimes, in the quiet moments pulling up to a gas station, parking outside my apartment, I imagine headlights flicking once in the dark. Not bright, just enough to say, "I see you." And I know he wasn't waiting for his cousin.